Hello, everybody. Welcome to Irish in America. I'm Carl Hudson, and I'm joined today with Ian Spandow. Ian is a friend of mine who moved over from Ireland to the US many, many years ago. Not too many, I hope. Well, we're going to have a quick chat with Ian today about how he moved over, why he moved over, and some of the reasons that he would have changed elements along the way, and what he hopes to achieve in the future. So, Ian, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the people.
Hey, Carl, good to see you today. Ian Spandow. I've been living in America for nearly 14 years now, but unusually I moved over when I was 40, so it wasn't a person who moved over here as a young man or anything like that. I was always fascinated by America from having visited as a child on vacations and things like that, and I had some cousins here, so I had some context. But I realized a lifelong dream finally in 2010. When I actually moved from Dublin to Northern California.
Awesome. And what were some of the driving factors behind that, rather than just having a love for America? But at 40, that's a big time to make a shift. What were some of the reasons that you chose at that time?
Well, I used to always joke to people that I didn't live in America, I lived in California, because I had spent a lot of time in New York in the 90s, and I'd been to several other states on different working assignments, but California had me from the very first time I ever visited it. Obviously, the climate and the beaches and the parks and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't really even that. It was more that I'm a technology guy all my life. Palo Alto and Silicon Valley is really the global center, or certainly was in 2010, might be moving a bit south of the border these days. And I knew that there'd be some of the brightest and some of the most successful technology companies. Obviously, we're in the Bay Area. And then the people, I really liked it. It was very multicultural, still is, of course. Really anything goes. I remember, Carl, funnily enough, one of my first nights out in San Francisco, I was in a bar on Haight Street, and and this is going to sound like a joke, but a guy walked in with a parrot on his shoulder, an actual real parrot on his shoulder.
All right.
And I turned to the guy beside me and I said, okay, this is going to sound like a joke, but there's a guy over there who just walked into this bar with a parrot on his shoulder. And my friend said to me, welcome to San Francisco, Ian.
Very good.
And nothing more to comment on it.
So what does being Irish, or, in the true Irish spirit, I don't want to narrow this to just the Irish in the States. So this is about everybody who's not from here and everybody who's chosen to come to this great country and live like we have. So what does it mean to be, one, Irish, and two, not from here but living in America? How's that been for you?
Yeah, so mixed experiences, really. When I first moved over back in the 90s, I spent, like I say, a lot of time in New York, and everyone would want to take me to Irish bars. And I would say, well, no, geez, look, I didn't come to America to go to Irish bars. I want to go to an American bar. But within a couple of weeks, I worked out that the Irish bars were actually the best bars in New York, and most New Yorkers thought so as well. So you ended up, gravitating towards restaurants and bars where, there were fellow Irish people. I never felt that was, very, very sticky in a way. You would meet fellow Irish people. I met them in Texas and in Florida and places like that. And you'd have a casual chat with them over an evening, and it wouldn't be a big deal that you grew up, a few miles apart in Dublin or something like that. It wasn't like, oh my goodness me, another Irish. No, I think we're used to seeing fellow expatriates anywhere in the world, not just here in America, of course, But then I also found that because I lived in San Francisco for 5 years, and then, San Francisco Bay Area for 10 years, and Pacifica for another 5 years. And Pacifica in particular was very multicultural. Family beside me was an African family on the other side of me was an Asian family. And weirdly enough, they seemed more American to me than almost anyone. They had the biggest July 4th parties. They would have all the lights up at Christmas. They really leaned into the American experience, probably more than we did. So again, California is so, I think, well, I could probably say this about every state, right? But California for me is not like a lot of the other places I lived or stayed in America. So it's as far away from Ireland as you can possibly get in America, right?
Right.
So you tend to be seen as a little bit more exotic. I live in Northern California, the countryside now. So yeah, I'm pretty much the only Irish person I know in the next 10 miles around here. But that wouldn't be true to say in San Francisco.
Very good. And having come through that journey, is there anything you would do differently if you're doing it again between moving here and being here?
I might have done more research. You know, I think when you get the green light or the green card to come to the US, I think a lot of people would just grab at the first opportunity that they had, and they go, okay, great, let's go here and live there and take that job. I was fortunate insofar as, like I say, I'd actually seen quite a bit of America. I'd been all around New England, and Massachusetts, and most of the East Coast to South. I've been around. So that was lucky for me because then I knew what to compare. But I think if you're coming from abroad and somebody says, oh, this state is great or that state is great or whatever, it'd be ideal if you could visit first and even just do the research. Like I say, like rent would be a good example. I should have done more research on rent when I moved to San Francisco.
Yeah, coming from Dublin, it wasn't that big a leap, but still, it comes around quick and high.
Yeah.
But so in terms of being here and being foreign in a land where, I don't know if you've experienced this, you get the, oh my God, you're Irish, I was in Galway, or oh my God, you're Irish, I was in Germany last year. And people don't seem to understand the difference between Galway and Germany sometimes. Just tell you that they're in Europe, right? So how do you, I know how I've dealt with it, and it's always with a smile and you move on, but how have you kind of dealt with the I'm trying to find the right way of saying this. The
patronization.
Yeah, it's like there's nearly, when I first moved here, I thought there was nearly a falseness to the politeness, but it's actually real. And kind of being cynical in Irish, learning that have a nice day. Some people actually meant it. Like, how was that cultural difference?
Yeah, that's a great call. That's a great call because you're right. I could have, on occasion, I might have been a bit cynical when people would say to me, oh my goodness, your accent. I just love your accent, right? And, you and I have very similar Dublin accents. Like, it would be a very weird thing for somebody back home to say, oh, Carl, I love your accent, right?
It would.
But what I found, right? But what I found over time and, a bit of humility is, you know what? They really do. They really do actually love the sound of the Irish accent. And bless them, bless them. At this point, I just go, thank you so much, And I tell them usually what you just brought up, which is I said, I get that a lot. It's such a funny thing to me because everyone I know speaks like this. So, like, it seems odd almost to hear it, but thank you so much. And also with the have a nice day thing, I mean, I don't know how much you've been around the Midwest, Paul, Carl, sorry. But I have never met more friendly people in my life than, well, Minnesota actually maybe might take that. But there's a couple of other places where, you cannot go in and buy a can of Coke in a 7-Eleven in 5 minutes. Because where are you all from? What? Well, what about that? Dublin, Ireland, huh? And then, you have to answer a dozen questions, and they tell you a little bit about their hometown and all that. And so, like you say, I think television and Hollywood maybe portrays it as a little bit fake. And I think Europeans in general are a bit jaded by, the kind of perfect smiles and all that kind of stuff that you and I don't have. But yeah, the longer you're here, you realize that actually these people are very genuine.
Yeah, I was to say, it took me 13 minutes to get checked in for a meeting in the little town called Lenexa in Kansas, because the person at the reception just wanted to keep chatting. And, it was a genuine curiosity because they never met someone before. But so look, I know you said about moving here, you do a bit more research about where you're looking to go. People are really bound or freed up by their network, by the group of people they can fall on for advice, for support, or whatever else that means to them personally. What would you say about having the right group of people or the right network, be it virtual or close by in a community? How would that help or hinder you, do you think, living over here?
You're touching on a subject now that's close to my heart, because as a career coach, I typically advise my coachees that the priorities you should have in life are health, family, community, and then career. So, and California is a great example for me for health, right? I like to ski, I like to swim. There's lakes and rivers everywhere here. I'm an hour and a half away from Tahoe. So I can have a healthier lifestyle just because I don't live in rainy Ireland anymore, right? But for most of us expatriates in particular, now family is going to suffer, right?
Mhm.
Very few of us immigrate with our entire families with us, right? So that's almost always a hit that you're going to have to take. Now, I came from an airline family, so we were actually used to travel and for people being away a long time and what have you. So my dad was an Aer Lingus captain. To me, it wasn't a big thing, right? My sister has lived abroad in Hong Kong, China, and France for 30 years. So it's not like I missed my sister from down the road or anything like that, right? So we've always been people who moved. But the community then being the thing that becomes the most important. Yeah, absolutely. I'm very lucky. When we lived in San Francisco, we got involved in the dog rescue community and volunteering for various different nonprofits. And we met some of our best friends and some of the nicest people we've ever met, and the people who are our dear friends 10 years later through that community. My wife Amy is a nurse. Again, she has a medical community, as you can imagine, from the hospital she works in and what have you, which is very strong and very tight. But now I live in the countryside, like I say. There's only 12 houses on my road. And I think I'm the youngest person on the road, but I'm not going to tell you what age I am. It's a much smaller, more rural community now. But I had an injury a few months ago, actually, and just to prove that point that it really doesn't matter. By the time there was first responders outside my house, almost every single one of my neighbors were also standing outside my house.
Yeah.
And they had texted my wife in the hospital to tell her what was going on. So, you make your own community in some ways, right?
Absolutely. And look, you've mentioned a couple of things there, which as we wind to a close here, I'd like you to touch on. One being the dog rescue charity that you have. Two, you called it out there, and everybody watching this will wonder, is that a sling from something too many creamy Guinness, or what did happen? So please tell us a little bit about the dog rescue, how you did get injured, and what's next for you. I know you have a few irons in the fire, so please give us an overview of that.
So Amy and I, my wife and I, been rescuing or fostering dogs, should I say, for about 11 years. But about 3 years ago, during the pandemic, we took the opportunity to move out of the Bay Area, come up here where we could get a bit of space, and open our own nonprofit. It's called Spandow House Dog Rescue. We specialize in taking high risk or high care dogs. So dogs that probably aren't going to get adopted anywhere else or may take many years to recover. We've had about 170 dogs go through our home so far. So we're small, but we're specialist. Currently, we have 8. And one of them, as I think Carl, came to us via an international partnership with an Azerbaijan rescue. So we've got a bit of reach as well. Sadly, you can't rescue them all. 120-pound giant mastiff that I was trying to help recover got into a scrap and decided to try and separate me from my arm. And I spent a week in the hospital and got some long-term nerve damage, but I still have my hand. I can move it just fine if you can just about see it. So it could have been a lot worse, Carl. Thanks for bringing it up, by the way. What a cheery way to end. No, but I would mention that if anybody watching this podcast or has any interest in adopting a dog or even fostering a dog, the shelters in America are currently overrun. Every rescue group that I know are completely over capacity. Our vets are being asked to put down litters of puppies because the people whose dog had a puppy cannot afford these 12 puppies. We get probably 3 to 5 calls a week and or emails with people begging us to take their dog in because they can't keep it for some reason. So if you're watching this and you're interested in helping out at all, please just go to spandowhouse.com, or Carl, maybe we'll stick a link onto this post.
Absolutely, I will. And I've been lucky enough to do some work with your charity, and the work there is stellar. The dogs that come through, Ian will can show you on the website. It's the pack. It's the dogs that rehabilitate the dogs, and it's a fantastic charity. And the work there is really, really wonderful. And I've been touched by it a couple of times. I've been out to your ranch a couple of times, and it is fantastic. So, understanding the altruistic side of you, with the couple of minutes we have left, why don't you tell us about what it is you do here in America now that you've established yourself, and what's next for that?
Well, I worked in technology my whole career, specifically in training, and the last 25 years specifically training technology sales professionals. So I've been working in enablement and coaching. I'm now a contract, or my words are failing me now. I do sales training and enablement on a contract basis now, so that I can spend more time with the dogs and less time with the software business. However, I am going to be publishing a book later this year. It's called Rescuing Dogs and Salespeople, and it's a memoir of 35 years in the technology industry, the Celtic Tiger in Ireland, and emigrating here to America.
Excellent. Well, look, thanks for spending time with us today. Obviously, I'm going to link the dog charity, and they can link your sales training below in the post. But anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
We'll have to have a Guinness sometime soon, Carl. That's the only real downside to moving to America, is that there really isn't good Guinness here.
New York has some of the best I've tasted in America.
New York, maybe.
Yeah, we'll do it there. All right, well, listen.
Not west of the Mississippi, unfortunately.
No. Well, look, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate all you're doing, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Carl. Take care.
Cheers.